Welcome to Your Pelvic Matters, how your head, shoulders, knees, and toes influence your pelvic floor and why it matters. I'm your host, Paula Billig. A yoga friend of mine recently described the pelvic floor as the Bermuda Triangle of the body. It's a big mystery. Nobody's quite sure exactly where it is or exactly what happens there when things do go wrong. And this does not have to be the case. There is so much that you can do to improve the health and the function of your pelvic floor. And I want to say right off the bat, so no one gets the wrong idea, that if you have pelvic floor dysfunction, physical therapy and medication are definitely options that are solidly on the table for you. I am not suggesting that you ignore medical advice, nor that I know better than anyone else. What I know is that for many women, especially those in prehab situations, a full body approach to pelvic floor health can have huge benefits and resolve many of your symptoms. But what do I mean exactly by prehab? Well, what I do isn't preventative exactly, because most of us are here due to already being introduced to our pelvic floors because something has started to go wrong. Maybe you know you have a pelvic tilt and it causes low back or hip pain. Maybe you've started to experience sneeze wee or exercise wee. Maybe you had a baby recently or years ago and things haven't been the same since. Or maybe you haven't had a baby, but there are still some issues that you thought only happened post-pregnancy. So I'm not trying to prevent these issues that are already happening, although it'd be great if we learned this stuff as kids and didn't have to go through it all now. But most of the women I work with are at a point where they're recognizing they have some issues, like maybe abdominal separation or early stage prolapse, feelings of heaviness or dragging, dead butt syndrome, which is also often called flat ass syndrome. There might be stagnation or other suboptimal experiences around your cycle, the pelvic tilts that I mentioned before, things like this. But these issues aren't so bad that you're going to physical therapy or getting a prescription just yet. You're at the prehab stage, not yet the rehab stage. And this is the perfect time to introduce you to the Your Pelvic Matters training program so that you can align and strengthen all of the structures between your head, shoulders, knees, and toes that will influence your pelvic floor. So let me introduce myself. I am Paula Billig of Paula's Herbals and Wellness. I'm coming to this Your Pelvic Matters program after 15 years of experience in the health and wellness world. I started as a reformer Pilates instructor with a studio that emphasized spine safety and pelvic floor support. So I've really been learning this for ages. I'm also a self-professed anatomy nerd, and I have my model skeleton and my favorite anatomy and physiology textbooks ready to give my clients demonstrations of everything that I'm talking about. I'm also an herbalist and an herbal educator. So that type of plant-based education, including around pelvic health, is another of my specialties. I believe that we can learn to live with more ease and grace, and that movement and herbal medicine are both equally great on-ramps onto the path that you're already on to help you find your best well-being. My website is paulasherbals.com, and that's where you'll find great content like my one-to-one and small group Your Pelvic Matters programs, as well as my free resources hub to get you started. I want to tell you about my full body pelvic floor program called Your Pelvic Matters. And I want to use the symptom I mentioned earlier called dead butt syndrome or that flat ass syndrome. Now, all of the structures in your body, the muscles and the tendons in your feet and the way that your knee joints work and how your hips engage and the muscles in your spine, your whole body is going to influence your pelvic floor, which is a pretty big idea. So I'm going to narrow it down to just looking at how dead butt syndrome and repairing that can help improve the wellness of your pelvic floor. But this is a broader concern as well. So dead butt syndrome is a real thing. It's not just a funny name. And it's a real problem for many reasons. Think of all of this like a crepe cake. As an aside, I was so happy to see season 8 of the Great British Baking Show make crepe cakes so that now even more people understand my crazy metaphors. It's great. Anyway, you're a crepe cake. Your layers of strength and flexibility, movement, alignment, function, all the things, everything has to be balanced and even and set properly to add up to something that looks like a normal cake, or in this example, a normal person. So I want to talk about your butt muscles, or the lack thereof, in terms of your pelvic floor function right now. But keep in mind, your butt muscles are also important for power, for balance, for bone strength, and for other things. But let's examine this one single crepe layer. In order to do this, I have to introduce you to my trusty assistant. This is Slim. Slim has been with me, for a very long time now. He's been repaired a couple of times. The first thing to notice about Slim is he's not anatomically accurate. That's fine. It gets the point across. If you're a particular stickler for anatomy, Slim is not your man, but it's going to be close enough. Now, I'm going to pop him off his stand so that that's not getting in the way. I want to show you how on your body, this is your spine, yeah? You've seen a spine. It comes down to the back of your hips, which is surprising to some people. If this is elementary for you, don't worry, it's just a little review. The point is that your pelvis, let me get his arm out of the way, your pelvis sits in front of your spine. Instead of, as some people sometimes think, your pelvis sitting right in the middle, that your spine comes down right into the center of your pelvis. Imagine carrying a heavy bucket at your side with your arm straight down versus carrying that bucket in front of you at your midline. It takes different muscles for your pelvis to be held in front of your spine as compared to it sitting right square down in the middle with your spine right in the center of it. So there's a lot of muscular stuff that's happening to keep your pelvis in front of your spine and not tilting so that your pelvis ends up underneath your spine. Okay, that's one set of things that's going on. Here's another. Your spine moves, right? Okay, that's its job. Now, Slim does not articulate at the spine, so we can't get him to bend and flex. But instead of watching Slim do it, I want you to imagine Shakira, right? So your hips can move side to side. They can make circles, they can make swivels, they can tilt front and back. All of the hip movement happens right where the spine attaches to the back of the two halves of your hip bones, back here. So the spine is the part that moves. The hip bones are the part that don't. And so to get hip movement, you have to move them relative to the spine. This is the back half of your hip attachment at the sacrum, this triangular part of your bottom of your spine. The front half of your hip attachment happens right here at what's called the pubis. Now, this is the two halves of your hips attaching at the front. Instead of these bony attachments that you have back here, the pubis attaches at what's called the pubic symphysis. You don't have to know the term. The point is, this is a very tough piece of cartilage that's holding everything together. You've got lots of kinds of cartilage in your body, including the stuff around your head where you've got your ears and your nose, the flexible stuff. The pubic cartilage is super tough, whereas the spine is super bendy. This will be important in a second. I'm telling you a little bit about the bony landmarks here so that we have a place to start from. There's one more bony landmark I want you to know about, and those are your sits bones. So come on, Slim, have a seat. Thank you. When you sit down, right underneath the center of your butt cheeks are your sits bones, these protrusions that you're going to be sitting on. They're going to come in handy as well. I won't go into that any deeper. Okay, the point here is to show you how all of this is impacting your pelvic floor. The pelvic floor is a muscle that attaches between, get a good shot here, lift your arm, between the pubis in the front and the sacrum in the back. Pubis in the front, sacrum in the back. It basically sits underneath you like a diaper, essentially. Now, when you sit, and instead of sitting on your sits bones, you roll back on your tail, you're shortening the pelvic floor. Remember I said, sorry, I got your leg stuck, Slim. Slim does not articulate at the spine, so I can't show you how this works on him. But imagine you sit here, and then when you roll back, you're pressing that tailbone towards the pubis by pressing on it with your body weight. Pressing the pubis towards the sacrum towards the pubis shortens the distance between the two, and thus it shortens the pelvic floor. This becomes a problem very quickly. A short muscle is a weak muscle, and you can't build strength into a weak muscle if it continues to be short. Imagine, I'm going to put you down for a second, Slim, holding your arm out. If you want to build strength in your bicep muscle, you need to extend and to flex, extend and flex. But what if you only held your arm halfway and you just did half of a movement? Or if you went all the way out and only came to halfway? Well, you wouldn't ever end up building all of the strength in that bicep that you possibly could because you aren't doing the full range through that joint. Once your pelvic floor muscle is short, you can't then straighten it out. Unlike your elbow, you're not dealing with a nice hinge joint between the sacrum and the pubis. So the only way to fix this is to pull the sacrum backwards, away from that pubic bone, right? So go this way. We've got your sacrum on the back side. We've got your pubis on the front side. We have to be able to pull that sacrum backwards. But unlike with your elbow, we don't have any direct hinge control over that sacrum to move it out. And the reason we have to move the sacrum, if you remember, is because the pubis is that super tough cartilage. The pubis will not move forward. The sacrum has to move backwards because the sacrum is part of that bendy spine. This is where your glutes come in. So we're all familiar with this image of the hips, big, flat, wide bones with the pelvic bowl in the center. Same nice, wide bones on the back side of the hips as too. All bones exist for muscles to attach to, and the big surface of the back of your hips are there for your glute muscles to attach. It's perfect. Now here's the thing, muscles always need two attachments to both sides of what's moving so that you can get movement. The other attachment for your glute muscles, aside from these big wide back of the hip muscles, is your sacrum. So whenever you feel your glutes engage, remember your glutes are your butt cheeks. If you're doing inclines, squats, lunges, whatever you're doing, when your glutes are working, then your sacrum is pulling and your pelvic floor is flexing and getting longer. On the other side, if your glutes are not working when you're exercising, if you're using your quads, your knees, your low back, or whatever else instead of your glute muscles, then you're not doing your pelvic floor any favors either. So we need to get your glutes to engage, your glutes to activate, to move your sacrum, to improve the length and thus the fitness of your pelvic floor. So a lot of people do glute work for the sake of the shape of their glutes. But in doing glute work, you're also going to be improving that pelvic floor at the same time. Now, I think a lot of people, and maybe that's you too, don't quite know what to expect when they see that I offer a full body approach to wellness. What I like to do, what I'm really best at, is educating you about the basics you need to know so that you can use my exercises to wake up and engage your glutes using this example, and then continue using them throughout your normal day in your regular activities of daily living at every opportunity. so that you don't actually have to keep practicing these separate exercises. Yes, I can teach you to activate your glutes, but I'll also teach you to sit and stand better so that your pelvic floor doesn't shorten in the first place, and so that it's easier to use the glutes as they were designed to be used in the first place. So that's what I mean by a whole body approach. I'm not just targeting that pelvic floor. I'm targeting all of the muscles and all of the structures in your body that also will improve the health and the function and the fitness of those pelvic floor muscles. Your Pelvic Matters is a beginner's level introduction to accessing the muscles and the structures that will keep your pelvic floor healthy. Yes, there are more advanced practices for later on down the road. And yes, I'm also an herbalist. But in the Your Pelvic Matters pelvic floor training program, I'm teaching you just purely how to fix or how to lengthen your pelvic floor to improve that very important single layer of the crepe cake. This is not going to try to fix all of you all at once, all at the same time. We're just focusing on that pelvic floor, using your whole body and some movement practices to get there. So I hope this helps you to see how your head, shoulders, knees, and toes, and everything in between them will be working together to work with, fix, and keep your pelvic floor nice and healthy. And I hope to see you in one of my Your Pelvic Matters program courses soon. Thank you very much.